Hello and welcome to History by Hollywood, a podcast series that examines the real events and people behind fact-based movies. This is episode 81 for Sunday the 11th of October, and this week we are covering 2017's Battle of the Sexes, starring Emily Stone and Steve Carrel as tennis players Billie Jean King and Bobby Riggs respectively. My name is Andrew Blischik, and with me as ever is Martin Darlington. Hello, Martin.
Hello, Andrew, and it's
been a while.
Yeah, it's good. We've got the band back together.
Good to hear your voice.
Absolutely. It's obviously ongoing issues with coronavirus and work and real life
Distance,
and everything.
workloads.
So we are aware that, as warned earlier this year, our output has become slightly more erratic than would be ideal. We will continue to attempt to put shows out as frequently as possible. And during this show, you'll probably hear Andrew and I discuss what we should be doing next because, well, we've got some news on that coming up. But what is quite exciting is we've had 3 new reviews. Now, as mentioned last time, we're not going to keep reading out full emails and reviews from people because it's not fair on everybody who didn't send the email and may have little interest in what that email contains. If discussion points come up or we need to ask you guys your opinion about something, then we will put that in. But in the whole, it will be a name check and any pertinent information. So do you want to take us through our reviews, Andrew? They're all 5 stars.
Thank you very much. Yeah, as Martin said, we've got 3 reviews, all 5 stars, all from the US, and we'd like to give a loud History by Hollywood thank you to Gal from Nebraska, who really enjoyed the Midway episode, Carrel Rolnick, who titled her review Terrifically Interesting and Fun, and finally E. Lewis24, also from the US, who stumbled across us while looking for information about Breaker Morant and entitled their review A Wonderful Surprise. Thank you very much to you all.
Yeah, obviously we don't have email addresses for the reviewers, so we can't directly reply, but E. Lewis24 made a couple of obscure but interesting suggestions for future films, one Polish and one a 1985 Soviet movie about the Nazi occupation of Belarus called Come and See, which sounded fascinating. So we will have a look at that, and thank you again. In listener feedback, we've heard from Jack McGroherty, David from Augusta, Georgia, Gary Shavit, and on Twitter, ASAP Mudcat advised us that during the attack on Pearl Harbor, the reason the US carriers were absent was that they were delivering aircraft to island bases. The Enterprise was taking Marine Wildcats to Wake, and the Saratoga was delivering aircraft to Midway. He also pointed out that Charles Harrelson, Woody's dad, that we mentioned last time, was a contract killer. The guy he shot and killed was Judge Maximum John Woods. With a nickname like that, you can understand why someone wanted him taken out. And he shot him in San Antonio at the behest of El Paso mob boss Jimmy Chagra. So thank you for the wonderful detail, Mudcat.
Yes, indeed. We also heard from good friend and fellow podcaster Sean Munger. Sean and Cody Clymer host the Green Screen podcast, and the long-anticipated joint episode on Gorillas in the Mist is scheduled to record in November for an early December publication date. It should be a fun show, even if the material will be grim in parts.
Yeah, and actually on that subject, I think we should look forward to what we're likely to do next. So on the planned episodes page, Gorillas in the Mist is the next planned episode, but I think we will get at least 1, if not 2, in between now and the publication date. So it's either The Two Popes or Just Mercy. Now, I've watched Just Mercy, and it is a really, really good film. I haven't yet seen The Two Popes, so I don't know what your thoughts are, Andrew.
Well, The Two Popes got really good reviews, and it is on my radar. I'm aware of it. It was a success, I think, earlier this year, late last year. But what was the other one that you mentioned? I'm not familiar with it at all.
Just Mercy. It's
what's the storyline?
Brian Stevenson, Harvard-educated lawyer, African-American, set up the Equal Justice Initiative in, of all places, Montgomery, Alabama. And what he started doing was defending death row inmates, not just African-Americans, But his Equal Justice Initiative have overturned 100 or well over 100 death row convictions. And I mean, one of the stats that the film gives you at the end is 1 in 9 death row convictions is subsequently overturned, which is a terrifying statistic. You know, you've got a 1 in 10 chance, or over a 1 in 10 chance, of being wrongfully convicted and sentenced to death. Thankfully, the period they spend on death row usually allows someone to jump in and defend them. And this is about, it's Michael B. Jordan plays Brian Stevenson, and the first convictee that he defends is a guy called, he was known as Johnny D, but his name was William Macmillan, I think, Walter Macmillan, played by Jamie Foxx. It's very good. It's really compelling, and it fits in very neatly with our ongoing race relations theme and the thoughts and themes. So I've watched it. I mean, our teenage daughter and her just turned 20-year-old boyfriend have watched it and absolutely loved it. And so it's gripping, but it's also really interesting to watch. And it's based on Brian Stevenson's own autobiography, or his memoir, also called Just Mercy.
Well, it's definitely on the short list now.
I think it's 100% on Rotten Tomatoes. It might be 96 or 97, but it's very high.
Well, you've got me interested, so let's put that at the top of the list then.
Okay, so we Just Mercy next, then Either the Two Popes, depending on Andrew and my schedules, and if we can squeeze it in before Gorillas in the Mist, or it may be Just Mercy, then Gorillas in the Mist, then... someone said to me, we had a little gathering here yesterday for Sharon's welcome home or welcome back to Qatar, and someone said, have you done any Christmas films? I was like, there aren't any facts-based Christmas films I can think of, really.
Wasn't there one about the armistice where they played soccer in no man's land in World War One?
Oh, yeah, I think you're right.
That's a bit tentative. Much more World War One film than a Christmas film, but that's the only one that I can think of.
Oh, well, we might have to look at that. Okay.
We can look into it.
So,
well, shall we get on with things now?
Absolutely. So, on with the story of the movie.
Thank you. The Battle of the Sexes is a 2017 biopic about the 1973 exhibition tennis match between former men's number 1 tennis player, Bobby Riggs, and then the number 2 women's player at the time, Billie Jean King. It was directed by the married couple, Valerie Faris and Jonathan Dayton, who previously had directed Little Miss Sunshine and 1 or 2 lesser-known films. The scriptwriter is Simon Beaufoy, a successful British writer behind the hits like The Full Monty, Slumdog Millionaire, and one of the Hunger movie games. As we mentioned, it stars Steve Carrel as Bobby Riggs and Emma Stone as Billie Jean King, as well as supporting cast that includes Alan Cumming, Bill Pullman, and Sarah Silverman.
Yeah, it cost $25 million to make, but only accrued like $18 million at the box office, so definitely fell short on the investment. The critics generally liked it. It's got a critic score of 85% of positive reviews. Audiences less keen, giving it 71%. The tennis scenes are very good, mimicking many of the shots played at the time in the matches that are being portrayed. The 2 stunt doubles for Stone and Carrel were professional US tennis players Caitlin Christian and Vince Spadea. It was filmed in Hollywood, nominated for a few different movie awards in 2018, including a Best Actress Golden Globe nomination for Emma Stone. It didn't receive a single Oscar nomination, and of the other 8 award nominations it did receive, unfortunately, none of them resulted in a win. I was not expecting to really enjoy it that much, and actually I did. I thought it was really well done.
I thought it was okay. It didn't really grip me, but I'm surprised that it was ignored in the award ceremony. It's, a nice nostalgia piece that's very well executed. It's got great themes of feminism, and yet somehow the Hollywood elite tended to ignore it, it would seem, given its award record.
Yeah, very much so. And actually, I'm thinking we're getting way ahead of ourselves if we start awarding marks, but Yeah, maybe audience in the 70s somewhere is probably reasonable.
That resonates with me.
Okay.
But let's get back to that later.
So, the synopsis. The movie opens in 1973 with Bobby Riggs, played by Steve Carrel, watching a TV screen which is showing Billie Jean King, played by Emma Stone, receiving a congratulatory phone call from President Nixon for her tennis achievements, including becoming the first female athlete to earn $100,000 in a year. Riggs doesn't seem particularly happy at Billie Jean's success, but next we cut to her as guest of honour at a gala ball where she dances with her husband Larry, played by Austin Stowell. We also see Gladys Heldman, wonderfully played by Sarah Silverman. She's a former tennis player and she owns a magazine. She approaches the dancing couple with a press release that enrages Billie Jean. For the upcoming Pacific Southwest Open, the male winner will win $12,000, while the women's winner will just get $1,200, so 10% of the male prize purse. Billie Jean and Gladys immediately track down Jack Kramer, played by Bill Pullman. He's a former tennis pro and now sports commentator who, as the biggest promoter of professional tennis, would have been behind the Open's prize money amounts. Billie Jean asks if the men's players bring in 8 times more fans than the women, because that's what the amounts are suggesting. Kramer says the men have families to support and that the men are much more exciting to watch, they're more competitive, so the prize amounts won't change. Billie Jean tells Jack that the professional women will all boycott the Southwest Open and they'll start their own women's event scheduled on the same days. As they storm out, Billie Jean and Gladys ask each other if they're really going to do this, and they convince themselves that they can and they will, but there's just a little bit of doubt in their voices. So the setup and scene setting, how did they do?
They did pretty good, and overall the accuracy of the movie is very, very strong, and even where it strays a bit, it does get the tone right. But we've already met the first major protagonist, Billie Jean King, played by Emma Stone, so let's just see how she got to this point in her career. She was born Billie Jean Moffat in 1943 in Long Beach, California, to a conservative middle-class Methodist family. Both her parents were very athletic, as was her younger brother Randy. He became a successful professional baseball player. Billie Jean had early success as a softball player before she took up tennis at the age of 11, buying her first tennis racket with her own money that she'd saved for the princely sum of $11. She then started university in 1961 at UCLA, where she met one Larry King, whom she married in 1965, so that's when she became Billie Jean King. By this time, she was starting to make a mark as a professional women's tennis player. She won the women's doubles in Wimbledon at the young age of 17 in 1961. The next year, in 62, she beat the number 1 women's player, Margaret Court, in the opening round of Wimbledon. So Margaret Court was the number 1 seed. In her first match in 1962, Billie Jean bailed her out. And then she went on in that same year to repeat her win of the women's doubles. Between 62 and when the film opens in 1973, she'd already won 10 Grand Slam Opens and was runner-up at another 6. In 1971, as the movie suggests, she became the first woman athlete to earn $100,000 in a year, and in 1972 became the first woman to be named Sports Illustrated Sportsman of the Year, because they had to, pivot and rename it Sportswoman, but
Yeah.
It was actually Sportsman of the Year it got. And as I've said, overall the movie gets the events and their sequence fairly correct. Larry King, the manager Gladys Heldman, and the ex-pro and tennis promoter Jack Kramer that we've met in these opening scenes, they're all real people. They're named well and get their look and feel pretty right. And the actions that we see unfolding in the movie are fairly accurately portrayed. The small prize amount offered to the women, the $1,200, is correct, and the decision by Billie Jean to start an alternative competition is very much her idea. The only thing that they get wrong, I'll return to this, I'm sure this is, the starting of this alternative competition is very much Billie Jean's idea. Gladys came in just a little bit later than the movie suggested in those opening scenes.
Right. I mean, the prize money arguments, of course, they're still ongoing today. I mean, Novak Djokovic got into hot water, I think it was last year, saying, but you shouldn't have equal prize money for Wimbledon men's and women's because we play best of 5 sets, they only play best of 3. And then someone else said, well, maybe you should be paid set by set. And someone immediately pointed out, Well, that gives a financial interest to go to 5 sets. So you might have people throwing sets to make sure that it's 2-2 and they have to go to a final set. So yeah, it's still very fraught. Okay, back to the movie. We now meet Bobby Riggs, played by Steve Carrel. Oh, I've said that, haven't we? So we've got Bobby Riggs, and he's having dinner with his third wife, Priscilla. Interestingly, played by Elizabeth Shue, who people may remember from The Karate Kid back in the day and Cocktail. And I thought she'd just stopped acting maybe and gone off and gone into production or directing or something. So it was fascinating to see her back, and quite topical for anyone who's been watching Cobra Kai. I don't know if you've seen this.
I'm aware of it. I know what its storyline, but I haven't watched it.
It's really, really entertaining in a naff way. For people of our generation who remember the original Karate Kid, it's got the entire original cast just about.
Yeah, well, including Elizabeth Shue.
No, now Elizabeth Shue hasn't been in it yet, but there's strong rumours she's coming back in season 3, which should be out next year. But you've got Ralph Macchio and I can't remember the guy who plays Johnny Lawrence, but it's kind of flipped on its head that in the original movie Johnny Lawrence was the privileged rich kid. As it turns out, that wasn't his richness, that was his stepdad's, who's horrible, and he's ended up a bit, not a down and out, but he's not doing very well for himself. But it's just a very funny. Yeah, I thoroughly recommend it. Obviously not something
Thanks
for
the
us,
tip.
but so we've got Elizabeth Shue and their son Bobby Jr., played by Cooper J. Friedman. Jr. bets $1 to Bobby over a match that they're watching, but Priscilla's very much against gambling, which she knows is one of Bobby Riggs's deep-lying vices. Bobby mockingly says, "Dinner time is not the time for gambling." And then he looks at his wife and says, "I mean, no time is ever good for gambling." He then makes an excuse to depart, saying he has to work back at the office, and we immediately cut to a tennis court where Bobby and his middle-aged pals are gambling, boozing and generally horsing around. Bobby's betting he can win a game of tennis against one of the other friends whilst walking 2 dogs and dodging furniture on his end of the court, and of course he wins. The bet, and this is kind of crazy, you'd think, it's going to be for $50. No, it's for his friend's Rolls Royce. And then he wonders how I'm going to explain this to Priscilla, because he's meant to be a reformed gambler, regularly attending Gamblers Anonymous meetings. So he takes a rain check on collection of the car. As Bobby and his pals chat in the changing room, Billie Jean's alternative women's league and women's lib in general comes up. The idea of Bobby playing and beating the number 1 US women's player comes up, and Bobby goes silent, as you can see the idea kind of growing in his mind. So this is probably a good time just to have a look at Bobby Riggs and the reality of his portrayal in the movie.
Sure. He was born in 1918 in Los Angeles, so by the time the movie takes place in 1973, he's 55 years old. As a 20-year-old playing amateurs tennis, he was part of the successful US Davis Cup team in 1938. Then in 1939, he won the triple in Wimbledon, taking the men's singles, the men's double, and the mixed double championships.
Wow.
And apparently he also won $100,000 because he bet on himself with the London bookies that he would in fact win all of those 3 championships. So, the gambling's there early in the piece, so they're getting that pretty well right with the action that we've seen. His tennis career was interrupted by World War II when he joined the Navy. And then once the war was over, his career continued. And all up, as an amateur and then professional, he won the US Open 5 times and Wimbledon once, so not too shabby. He continued to play as a professional player until 1962, when he was some 44 years old. It's now in the movie, it's 11 years later, Bobby's 55, and as the movie shows, he's a confident self-booster who is in his twilight years, looking for a reason to get back in the spotlight. The movie correctly shows Priscilla as his second wife, but by 1973, they're already separated, and they've been divorced for 2 years, even though they would remarry many years later in 1991, which was 4 years before Bobby's death from prostate cancer in 1995. So I telegraph a bit of their future, and they are playing fast and loose with the Priscilla relationship throughout this entire movie to kind of add to the tension, add to maybe the troubles that Bobby might face when he starts gambling and things like that. But other than that, him as this kind of brash, self-promoter who'll do anything for the limelight, bet on two flies going up a wall, which they return to, that kind of risk-taking element of his nature. That's very, very accurate.
And it's strange because the character portrayed very, very entertainingly by Steve Carrel is just a bit fly-by-night, a bit, he's a bit ooh, he's a bit he's a wheeler and a dealer and a hustler, and you just don't imagine someone like that having the dedication and willing to put the effort in to be as successful a tennis player as he was. And yet he was that successful tennis player. So it's really, he's quite an interesting contrast of characteristics. And he obviously was very, very good. I don't know, maybe he didn't train very hard, and if he had done, he might have been a Bjorn Borg or Pete Sampras level tennis player, but he clearly, he'd been a world number one, hadn't he, in the men's game?
Yeah, he's in the Tennis Hall of Fame after the Battle of the Sexes matches. He was a very well regarded tennis player, but but also sexist and chauvinistic. But he probably played on that as a persona because it got him in the limelight.
Yeah, exactly. Make the outrageous statement: "There's no such thing as bad publicity." So,
not that works anymore. Obviously, we're much more savvy to people making ridiculous exaggerations and getting headlines.
Yeah, it's no chance that someone who acted like that could ever, rise to say US president or or prime minister. Yes, I'm getting political.
Back to the movie.
Thank you, Andrew. You're my moderator. We now see Billie Jean and the other 8 top women players getting their hairdos. They're getting their hair done and styled prior to the press conference about their new competition. The players are nervous about the gamble they're all taking with this new venture, which is yet to find a sponsor, let alone offer any real prize money. Whilst getting her hair done, Billie Jean gets chatty and a little bit flirty with her stylist, Marilyn Barnett, played by Andrea Riseborough. Marilyn knows nothing of tennis or the new tournament, but she does take an interest in Billie Jean, and we pick up that there's more to come from this relationship. On departing, Billie Jean gives Marilyn a bunch of tickets for the next month's matches. Next, we see the women all sign up before the press as professionals for Billie Jean's competition, and they're paid $1 for the privilege by Larry King. Bill Pullman's Jack Kramer is also there, trying for one last time to talk Billie Jean out of starting this rival competition. Jack tells her that if she plans to boycott his tennis association with her own tournament, she and the other female players will be kicked out of the US Lawn Tennis Association. Billie Jean accepts the ultimatum and tells the ladies, "We've just been kicked out." Then at a dinner, Gladys tells the glum women players that they now have a sponsor and can all light up. A very clever little double entendre, as their generous new sponsor is the Philip Morris Cigarette Company's new female-targeted product, Virginia Slims. They're offering $7,000 for each prize won in the new tournament. The Rebel players are all thrilled that their movement is gaining momentum, as Gladys tells them they have designers on board for the uniforms, they're getting new players, including the up-and-coming Australian player Margaret Court. We see a montage of positive scenes for the lady players. They're getting snappy new designer uniforms, and they come under the supervision of sports designer Teddy Tinling, played by the versatile Alan Cummings. They're doing media interviews and generally promoting and organising their new tournament every way they can, and, along the way, promoting female equality. Next we meet their new recruit, Australian player Margaret Court, played by Australian actress Jessica McNamee. She arrives at the competition's modest motel with her husband and toddler. Court seems generally unhappy and tells her husband that Billie Jean has never liked her, almost wondering what exactly she's doing there. So, how do they do with this whole let's break away and start a rival tournament?
Yeah, it moves very quickly in the movie. She tells Jack at one stage she's starting the Rebel comp, and the next scene we see them up and running with the 8 top women player and Billie Jean as well. That's all pretty accurate. There were 9 Rebels, including Billie Jean, and it was her idea. The only inaccuracy is to suggest that Billie Jean and Gladys, as I've already said, they had this idea in front of Jack and said we're going our own way. It's true that Billie Jean was in on the ground floor of the rebellion, but she convinced the other 8 female players to join her, and only then, when they had this Rebel 9, as they're referred to, the 9 of them went to Gladys Hellman who publishes the magazine on tennis, and they said, we want you to promote us and manage the whole show. So she came on last of all, whereas this would suggest she was on first of all.
Yeah, so they've played around with the timeline a bit.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. Marilyn Barnett, the hairdresser that starts to do their dues just before the press conference, she's actually accurately portrayed in the movie, initially as a hairstylist, and the players were also signed on for $1, so that's accurate too. And then the bit in the diner where Gladys announces Virginia Slims are on board, that's all correct too, because Virginia Slims did sponsor their new competition and the players did all get free cigarettes, which is the movie shows some of them proceeded to try to smoke.
Yeah.
It's interesting to note that the 1973 amount of $7,000 is worth some $45,000 in today's money. Now, that doesn't sound like too much to our ears. We've got all these rich sportsmen, and $45,000 as the final purse of a competition doesn't sound a lot. But remember, it's 6 or 7 times the $1,200 they were offered to stay with the usual tour. And I did a bit of musing about this. When I saw that sum of a public competition on TV getting $45,000 to the victor, it does show you how much things have grown since then with TV rights and things like that. And when I did a bit of looking around, there's an introductory tournament to the Australian Open called the Brisbane International, which is a women's competition. If you win the Brisbane International in the lead up to the Australian Open, the winner would get $250,000. While the winner a month later of the women's singles at the Australian Open, she would get a cool $2.85 million. So, in fact, if you go down the list of people that lose in the Australian Open, you get to the opening round. If you lose the opening round, in other words, you haven't won a game in the Australian Open and you're bundled out in the first round, you take home $62,000.
Not bad for getting beaten.
Yeah, not bad for getting beaten. And remember that we transfer the $7,000 that the winner of Virginia Slims get, that comes to $45,000. And if they were to lose in the first round of the Australian Open, they get $62,000. Yeah, and there are some problems with that. You do get some first round matches where players who clearly aren't fit turn up, lose a set, and then crash out with an injury because they're journeymen. $62,000 is a lot to somebody like that, and they really shouldn't even be there, but they kind of limp through the first match and get enough to keep them going for a bit longer. Maybe, I'm not suggesting we cut the prize money for these sportsmen, but it does show you how much money there is in these modern days of television betting wars for sports, for the rights to televise some of these first-class sporting matches.
Definitely.
And the whole controversy about the cigarettes. Now, we could go on about how much things have changed with cigarettes in the world, how they quite a normal product 30, 40 years ago to being quite the pariah that they are now. I mean, current day Billie Jean, she's completely unapologetic about taking the sponsorship money from a tobacco company. She correctly points out that they were desperate for a sponsor in 73, and absolutely no one saw a problem with healthy athletic role models taking money from a cigarette company. So people make a big deal of it now, but back in those days, cigarette smoking was pervasive in every form of transport, every house, every office, every workplace.
Yeah. People
constantly smoked, and more to the point, tobacco companies were advertising everything, sporting events, and beyond. Benson and Hedges used to support the Australian Ballet, and they proudly, were on every single program up until the 1990s, 1980s, I'm sure.
Well, in my lifetime, I've seen adverts from certainly the 60s, possibly the 70s, saying most doctors smoke Camel or whichever brand it was, and this was just when people were starting to say there may be some health issues associated with tobacco smoking, and so they say most doctors choose to smoke. And I remember at school doing Emile and the Detectives play, and one of the lines in it was this creepy man on the train says to Emile, "Do you smoke yet?" And he says no, so the man offers him a sweet instead. But it's not, do you smoke? It's do you smoke yet? This assumption that when you're grown up, you'll start smoking. So, I mean, my chosen sport of motorcycle racing, it was all tobacco sponsorship, and then obviously that fell out of favour, and then it's now energy drinks. You got Red Bull and Monster, and they're starting to be looked at with, askew, and you think, okay, what's the next big thing? But it's amazing how quickly we become conditioned. You watch a movie like Good Night and Good Luck, where there's a young lad handing out mugs of tea in the production office of a studio, and he puts the mugs of tea down, then goes back along the line and lights all their unlit cigarettes, and all these guys are in this small studio office, absolutely buried under clouds of smoke, and I just look at it and wince and think, but that was the norm in my working lifetime,
And, smoking cigarettes on planes. It was only banned in the early 90s, and it's so impossible to even imagine that now. People with lighters and cigarettes up in the sky, let alone the pollutants they're adding into the atmosphere of the plane. It just seems bizarre, but it's become the new norm very quickly.
One of the main reasons the airlines got so on board with it was it saved them an awful lot of money in cleaning air filters, because their air filters didn't get clogged up so quickly. And I remember at the cinema saying, if you wish to smoke, please sit on the left-hand side of the auditorium. And you think you'd see this massive cloud of smoke drifting across to the right, thinking, yeah, it's really protecting them. Yeah, and planes, I think it was the back half you could smoke, the front half you couldn't. Strange. But I've been watching, recently made dramas or whatever, and you see people shaking hands and hugging, and I'm wincing, going, what are you doing? Oh, no, okay, this was pre-COVID, so I'm already becoming conditioned and institutionalised. Yeah. So just in this reality bit, the wrap-up of Billie Jean King and Margaret Court, just to try and get us mildly back on track.
Yeah, well, they had that snippy attitude by Margaret about the motel and commenting that Billie Jean and her have never gotten on well. That's sort of true as well. That's quite true as well. In fact, there was a well-known sporting rivalry between the two of them. They more or less the same age when they first met in Wimbledon years earlier in '62, and from then on there was always a healthy competition between them both. They were respectful towards each other. They never really got snippy from what we know in public, but it's one of the great sports rivalries between Billie Jean King and Margaret Court. Overall, they played each other 32 times during their professional careers, and the 22 victories went to Margaret Court, and only 10 to Billie Jean King. So on paper, Margaret Court is the superior player as well.
Yeah, because I think of, top women's player in the 70s, I think Billie Jean King. Now, that might be because she was so successful at Wimbledon and being British, and my parents used to watch Wimbledon every year. So maybe I'm skewed, and Margaret Court did better at the US or Australian Opens or whatever. But yeah, I saw very much that Billie Jean King's mantle was taken on and carried on by Navratilova, Martina Navratilova, and they both seemed very athletic, very powerful, very determined. Margaret Court seemed to be from an earlier era, so it's interesting that they're similar ages.
Yeah, and I seem to recall that when Serena Williams got bundled out of the French Open recently, that was denying her the opportunity to break Margaret Court's record for the number of Opens that any female tennis player has won. So I think if I remember that correctly, I think Margaret Court has won the most number of Opens, and it still stands to this day, despite Woody having retired earlier than the ages that Serena or Venus are at.
So back in the movie, just to wrap up, they do go a long way to. You only see Margaret Court in a few scenes, but she's always been very sniffy, isn't she? She's very conservative with a small c, family.
Yep.
So that is set up very early. Back in the movie, we go back to Bobby Riggs' home. He's horsing around with his young son very playfully, and the doorbell rings, and then we've learned that the Rolls Royce Bobby won as a bet has been delivered to his home, which of course does not impress his wife Priscilla. Bobby sighs and he gives in to her on something as he drives off on his own in the Rolls Royce, and we assume this is to give it back.
I didn't know. I didn't follow the action. I thought, what's he sighing for? And I wasn't sure what he was doing. We find out soon enough, though.
Yes, and we don't think that the Rolls-Royce bet was actually a real thing, but it's a device that the movie uses to show how addicted to gambling he was, but also, he was fun-loving and impulsive and reckless, which certainly seems to be borne out by his real life. So back in the movie, we now cut to Billie Jean in San Diego preparing for the first Virginia Slims event. Marilyn Barnett, the non-tennis loving hairstylist, appears to wish her good luck. As the two chat, we see Margaret Court looking on somewhat disapprovingly, and we can see a romance developing between Marilyn and Billie Jean. They go out nightclubbing and dancing, and Billie Jean then asks Marilyn to stay the night in her hotel room rather than catch a late bus home. Before we know it, they have a romantic encounter. Back in Bobby's world, he's alone watching TV in his Rolls Royce, which has got a television in it, incredibly. He gets an update of Billie Jean's tennis match in the competition, and he impulsively decides to call her then and there, interrupting her passion with Marilyn. And goodness knows how he got her number, and she wants to know as well. And the movie sort of skirts around that. He says, "I'm offering you $35,000 to play a televised tennis match with me." She says, "No thanks." But she can't get the mojo on anymore for Marilyn, and she gives her what Marilyn calls the speech about, "Look, this isn't going to go anywhere. I've got a husband, I'm a public figure, I've got very conservative parents." But Marilyn's pretty understanding. She says, "Okay, yeah, good night." And she gets into one of the other beds. It's a twin room. But as the lights go out, Billie Jean can't resist, and she comes back and joins Marilyn in her bed. We then cut back to Bobby, who's gone to his older son's house, Larry. This is played by Bill Pullman's son, Lewis Pullman. It seems Priscilla's thrown him out for his gambling, and he says to Larry he needs a bed for the night. He tells Larry not to worry about him. "I've got big plans." Larry's not at all impressed, and he says, "Yeah, and I've heard them all." The next morning, Bobby's back home trying to patch things up with Priscilla without success, and we see some of his clothes being thrown out of an upstairs window. And he goes as a reluctant attendee to a Gamblers Anonymous meeting. But he's in denial, telling the group that we're all gamblers in life. He says, "You're only here because you're bad at it. You're terrible gamblers. What you need to do is not stop gambling, but learn to be better." Then, at what we assume is his therapist, he's complaining he can't get a break and everything would be fixed if only Billie Jean would play in his exhibition match. The therapist tells him Billie Jean will be less of an attraction soon, as she's likely to lose the number one ranking to the Australian Margaret Court. Somehow this is a surprise to Bobby, and it gets him thinking of Court as an alternative, just as the camera pans back and we learn that he's been playing cards and gambling with his therapist all this time. It's just, yeah.
They're a couple of great scenes, aren't they? They're very enjoyable.
Anyone who's familiar with Steve Carell's work, this is so Steve Carell, and yet everything I've read says this was Bobby Riggs. This is how he operated. So, yeah, how did they do with the... well, let's go back to the Billie Jean and Marilyn Barnett's romance.
Well, it'll be said that Marilyn Barnett really was a hairdresser that came close to Billie Jean. They did have a long relationship, several years at the very least. So it is correct. They did get it on, as we say, about this time, but we don't know. Of course, we don't know the first date. We don't know the conversations they had. We don't know exactly when it happened. But they've only met twice and they're already sharing a bed. I wonder whether that's a little bit accelerated for the narrative purposes. But look, it feels right, doesn't it? It kind of works as a scene. You can see them, getting together and lots of affection. So it works as a scene to tell us that they will become a couple. So I quite like that. And
to the credit of the movie, they don't make that scene at all titillating, really. It's far more about the emotion than the physical contact. The physical contact is just an expression of the emotion, and I think Emma Stone does a great job of portraying the turmoil that she's feeling, because everything I've ever picked up on Billie Jean King is she's a fundamentally decent person, and she's feeling guilty because she is married to, as we'll see, a very nice guy. But at the same time, she has these very powerful emotions and feelings. So I thought it was done very sensitively and subtly and effectively.
I agree.
Yeah.
I agree. And the bit about ringing her up at night, that's true. He did ring a bunch of hotels in San Diego asking to be connected to Billie Jean, and eventually he was successful. It was late at night, and he did offer her $35,000 then and there to play him on a televised match. And as the movie tells us, she declined on the spot and rebuffed him. The whole bit, the great scene where he goes He's been thrown out by Priscilla and goes to try and get some clothes. That's a fiction because, as we've already said, they were separated for 2 years by now.
Yeah.
And all same thing with the Gamblers Anonymous scene. What a great scene! It's so enjoyable, so funny that he doesn't think he's a gambler at all. He's a winner, and trying to convince the others that they're in the wrong event. They should be down the racetrack rather than in Gamblers Anonymous is quite funny. But I can only assume that's fiction for the narrative. It's really effective, but I don't know if Bobby Riggs ever went to a Gamblers Anonymous meeting at all.
But he did offer it to this exhibition match he wanted to do. He did go to Billie Jean before Margaret Court, which is interesting.
That's right. That's right. She was his first pick because she was a US player, probably first one that came to mind. And they did know each other. They were friendly and continued to be friendly after the Battle of the Sexes matches, which is a nice touch of reality.
So back in the movie, we are in San Diego. We see Marilyn and Billie Jean the next morning. Billie Jean is a bundle of nerves and possibly regrets, and she's trying to figure out the best way to disguise the fact that they've spent the night together. Outside the motel, they join the other players and the designer Teddy Tinling. Teddy, who's very, very camp and obviously gay man. He's the uniform and sportswear designer. He immediately twigs what they've been up to, but the other players don't seem to catch on, and they all get excited about the prospect of Marilyn joining the tour as the team's hairdresser. Billie Jean seems to be both thrilled and a little bit terrified by the idea. Margaret Court and her husband depart as well, as Margaret disapprovingly informs her husband on the nature of Marilyn's relationship with Billie Jean. But Margaret takes great comfort from their affair, saying Billie Jean's game will decline due to such degenerate, sinful behaviour. So...
Yeah. Well, as I say, I think they're compressing the relationship, so they couldn't even keep their relationship secret for one night. The first night afterwards, they're twigged by Teddy and others. I'm sure that they would have been much more discreet for a period of time, and maybe it might have taken years for others to realise what was going on. At court, Margaret Court being so judgmental and a prude, I'm not sure if she was quite that judgmental. It could well be true, though. She was a Christian at this point in time, and a bit later on, she became a fundamentalist by becoming a Pentecostalist. And in case you don't know, she then went on after her tennis career in the mid-80s, in the mid-80s she got a theological degree, and in the mid-1990s she founded her own Pentecostalist ministry in Western Australia. She is now a vocal critic of gay rights and in the vote that Australia had in 2007 of whether we would accept gay marriage, she was a vocal critic of the proposal and said that, gays will burn in hell, that kind of fundamentalist shtick. She announced that she's no longer going to be flying Qantas because Qantas were really behind the yes vote. And as I say, she remains Australia's greatest female tennis player in history. Here in Melbourne, where I'm based, where they have the Melbourne Open, Australian Open once a year in Melbourne, the main court is named after the Australia's tennis great Rod Laver, and the second show arena is named after Margaret Court. So she's being prominently recognised for her achievements in tennis. But in recent years, current and past players, including Martina Navratilova, have publicly called for the second court to have her name removed from it because she's so anti-gay in her thoughts. So she's still a controversial figure, and she is extremely conservative Christian, so it could well have been the case back then that she was disapprovingly looking on any of the lesbian relationships she became aware of.
So back in the movie, Marilyn and Billie Jean are driving off to the next tennis venue when Billie says, look, last night's romp can't happen again. It was just fooling around. They continue to chat as they drive whilst Elton John's Rocket Man plays on the radio, and we get the clear impression that these two will become very close. Sure enough, before the song finishes, they're kissing in a hotel lift. At the same hotel, Bobby Riggs appears at the room of Margaret Court's family, and he offers Margaret the $35,000 to play the female opponent in his Battle of the Sexes match. The next morning we see Larry King arrive at the hotel lobby, and Teddy rings ahead to give Billie Jean the heads up about the surprise visit from her husband, who inconveniently joins Marilyn in the lift to Billie Jean's room. They both arrive at Billie Jean at the door to her room at the same time, but Marilyn very quickly makes up a story and she sheepishly leaves. Larry, however, immediately sees an unfamiliar bra and seems to understand what's happened, but he says nothing. So he knows, and she knows he knows, and a couple of awkward moments pass between them. Then Larry says, look, it's really important that you get uninterrupted rest, so I'll get my own room whilst I'm here. And I think it was mentioned early in the movie, wasn't it, from Billie Jean says, oh no, he doesn't come with me on tour because I've got to be completely focused on my tennis and nothing else. I think the portrayal of him is really quite lovely. He's so understanding, and he's obviously got a huge amount of affection for his wife, but also understands that she has some inner turmoil and conflict.
Yeah, that's right. And he is very sympathetically portrayed, and he seems to be one of the good guys when it comes to supporting your wife going through all sorts of professional and personal decisions. And it was a nice touch, I think, when we hear Rocket Man playing an Elton John song and the two of them becoming intimate at that moment, because Billie Jean King is very close friends with Elton John. And he wrote a song called Philadelphia Freedom, which was purely to support her in a later tennis competition when they tried to have a city-based tennis player, like a sports team playing another city.
Right.
It didn't go anywhere, but he wrote Philadelphia Freedom for her because she had the Philadelphia franchise for her tennis comp.
Got you.
And they got that in there, which is a nice touch. The movie shows Bobby Riggs appearing at Margaret Court's room and offering her the $35,000, and as we already mentioned, that is correct. He did, and she thought it was a great idea, and takes him up on the offer, as we'll see later. And we've already said about how supportive Larry was anyway. So maybe,
and probably there's quite dramatic compression of time.
Exactly.
Yeah, okie doke. So back in the movie, it's the next day, and we're at the championship match between Margaret Court and Billie Jean, which Billie Jean loses, and in the changing rooms after the match, she's pretty crushed by the loss. Larry says to Billie Jean, look, I'm going to go home, let you have some space, and he promptly leaves without much of a farewell. Outside, he bumps into Marilyn, who he obviously recognises. She asks him for a cigarette, and Larry says, look, you smoke, and this is the Virginia Slims tennis event, but you have to understand Billie Jean does not approve of cigarettes. It's almost like he's giving her relationship advice. Larry tells Marilyn he's not her competition and that Billie Jean's true love is tennis, and she won't allow any threat to her tennis career, including any public talk of her being part of a same-sex relationship. He leaves, and we cut back to the locker room where Margaret Court, rather jubilant, is telling Billie Jean she's going to accept Bobby Riggs' $35,000 Battle of the Sexes offer. Billie Jean tries to talk her out of it, but Margaret says she'll be happy with the extra attention as she has nothing to hide, and leaves champagne glass in hand. Billie Jean blows up in front of Teddy, the fashion designer working with them, saying Margaret will put feminism back for years if she plays the 55-year-old former champ and loses. Teddy consoles her a bit and says, hey, you need to be careful in this unforgiving world. That night, Billie Jean and Marilyn are in bed together, swapping their thoughts and fears, and then Billie recalls an early humiliation as a child tennis player, which motivated her to be the best in the world, to ensure that she won't be ignored and people will hear her voice. So, they did play each other in that 73 competition, but there's been some playing around with...
Just a little, yeah. The
details,
The movie shows Billie Jean losing to Margaret Court in the Virginia Slims match, and they did play each other twice in 1973, and Margaret Court did win both those matches, but it wasn't for the final of any of the tournaments, and they never played in LA as the film suggests. But, they got it right as far as tone goes, as far as rivalry, and as far as Margaret being the better player at this point in their careers. And as we've already said, Margaret did in fact say yes to the exhibition match and the $35,000, but of course we don't know if any of the scenes between Billie Jean or Margaret or Teddy, where she's complaining about feminism, and Margaret's actions are accurate, but the sequence, as we've said, of Bobby's offer, $35,000 being accepted, and there being a healthy rivalry between the two tennis players is quite correct.
So back in the movie, we cut to Larry Riggs' apartment. This is Bobby's adult son. Bobby arrives and asks his son to help him prepare for the match with Margaret Court. Bobby's very excited, and we see Larry get caught up in the mood, and the two of them are off and running. Then suddenly it's courtside on the day of the match. Margaret and Bobby arrive, and the commentators provide us with a very 1973 mainstream view, saying, well, Bobby is going to win because women can't handle the pressure, they're not tough or strong enough. And then we see the Virginia Slim players, the ladies on the tour organised by Billie Jean. They're together at the airport in Hawaii, and they're crowded round a couple of small coin-operated TV sets to see what happens in the Riggs court match. Bobby's about to win the first set as they start watching, and he wins it easily 6-2. And then he goes on to win the second set and the match just as easily 6-1. So he takes the match and wins the battle. We then cut to Jack Kramer, who helpfully tells us that for sport, politics, and all the other important walks of life, women are not made for tough stuff. The other players in Hawaii are disappointed in the result as they watch Riggs on TV claiming he's the number one women's player in the world, and he triples the bet to $100,000 for any woman to try and beat him on the court. Billie Jean storms off in a dark mood. Later that night, we see Billie Jean leaving Marilyn's room, still in a dark mood, and she goes off to practice her serve under the tennis court lights. We see Marilyn feel that she's come between Billie Jean and her tennis, so she packs her bags and leaves, as we then see Billie Jean call Larry, who's her husband and also a manager, to inform him she's decided to accept Bobby's challenge. Larry and Billie Jean are fired up at the challenge, and they are determined for her to win because she's realised she has to correct what she sees as the error of Margaret Court losing to him. The married couple bond over the phone, and Billie Jean ends the call with something of an apology, saying she's not a good woman. Okay, how did they do with this bit?
Well, the first scene where Larry gets on board to help his dad promote the Battle of the Sexes match is correct. He was an active player in making sure that both versions of the battle were promoted, one for his dad's benefit. And then we see the first Battle of the Sexes match, which Margaret Court loses comprehensively, and that's all accurate too. And according to one Billie Jean biography, Billie Jean did in fact believe she needed to step up and put Bobby Riggs back in his place. It happened immediately. As soon as the film portrays it, happened immediately. Billie Jean says, right, I've got to right this wrong. She had just become a big investor in the future professional women's tennis with her rival competition, and she couldn't let it be seen as some sort of second-class product. And she, in reality, she was quite the advocate for women's issues, and not just women in tennis, but women's equality in sports and beyond sports. She was a big proponent of trying to get equal prize money for women, and eventually she was proved right in that, as we've already mentioned. The two genders both get the same money in the major tournaments. It's worth noting that a year earlier, in 1972, the US federal government had passed a law that was known as Title IX, and this stated that there could be no discrimination based on sex in any education program that receives federal funding. And those lawmakers that were passing Title IX were clearly thinking about classroom activities or lab-based activities, but those proponents of college female sports knew it would also apply to the spending of sports. And at that stage, 95% of any expenditure on college sports was 95% male and 5% female. So the impact a year earlier of Title IX on female sports, it's very hard to understate. And amongst its many supporters was Billie Jean. So she was a big proponent of Title IX, which revolutionised the way that female sports were handled and promoted at the college level. And it's really difficult to understate the importance of college sports on American sports. The college sports circuit is huge. They're all amateurs at that stage, but they almost all exclusively go from college basketball to professional basketball, college football to professional football, and even college tennis to professional tennis. And the fact that they had to open up those sports for females had a really dramatic impact on female access to professional sports ultimately.
Yeah, and good for the Nixon administration putting that one through.
Yeah, true. And as they show it towards the end of that scene with Larry and Billie kind of bonding and becoming a team to try and promote Billie Jean and women's tennis, that's quite true. Larry was a very sympathetic and effective character for all aspects of Billie Jean's career. He was, and continued to be even after all of the gay relationship stuff came out, as we'll get to, I think.
Yeah. Okay, back in the movie, back in the family home, Bobby Riggs is in full flight, telling Priscilla he's back on top. He's about to play Billie Jean for a $100,000 purse. It'll be televised on primetime TV. Priscilla tells him, "Why don't you calm down on the chauvinist pig stuff, as I'm a woman and I've been supporting you in recent years." This calms him a little, but he's still excited at making the cover of Time magazine. Then he gets all mushy. He tells Priscilla that, "Look, I need to be with you. I'm a reformed man. Just ask my shrink." And Priscilla replies, "Yeah, I've already spoken to your shrink, and he gave me $30 for you. This is what he owes you for your winnings from your gambling with him." And she's quite humorous about it, but clearly there's going to be no reconciliation today. We then see Bobby call his bookie, and he bets $15,000 on himself to win against Billie Jean. Again, this is fiction, isn't it? Because him and Priscilla had already divorced.
Yeah, that's right. And the neat little scene at the end where he's betting on himself. We've already said that he did bet on himself when he was in Wimbledon, so it's definitely not unheard of that he would be betting on himself, but we've got a little bit more on that later.
Yeah. So back to the movie. In the next scene, we see Bobby and Billie Jean hamming it up in a press conference to promote the Battle of the Sexes match. They're arm wrestling, comparing biceps and so on. And of course, Bobby tries to amuse us with the places women should and shouldn't belong. It's incredibly sexist. It's very wince-inducing and exaggerated, but the mainly male press are eating it up, and it's just seen as jolly good, blokey banter. Billie Jean puts him in his box, though, saying dinosaurs can't play tennis. We then see Bobby ignoring his son and coach in favour of a vitamin salesman named Rio Blair, played by Fred Armisen, who puts Bobby on a regimen that involves him taking dozens and then hundreds of vitamin pills per day. Back on the tour, the other professional ladies are in the changing room discussing Billie Jean's chances against Bobby Riggs, which they agree aren't good. And just then, Billie Jean emerges from a cubicle, having heard their every word. The montage scenes of the press conferences and the publicity stunts and the vitamin pills. How did they do?
All good, all correct. He did have, he was a self-promoter, as we already said. He'd do anything to get on the media, and so they got that aspect of his personality and career correct. The Rio Blair character is correct. He did sell some crazy ideas about vitamins to Bobby, and he was taking hundreds of vitamin pills a day at this stage and promoting the fact that he was too, which sounds crazy to us, but it is accurate for what it's worth.
He does sort of give you the impression he's one of those people who, often described as they turn up to the opening of an envelope if someone would pay them to do so. He's shameless, isn't he?
That's right.
He's willing to cut a ridiculous figure just to promote something, as we'll see. So back in the movie, we see Larry and Bobby at home. They're watching a series of celebrity talking heads on telly, pretty much all predicting a Riggs win, after which a sports commentator tells us that Billie Jean has just lost her last US Open match, forfeiting the match in the first set. So Bobby feels he has the match against her in the bag, provided she's not actually injured. We then cut to Billie Jean's hotel room, where Billie Jean, Larry and Gladys are trying to make sense of her poor form. It turns out she has the flu. Gladys says, "Look, take the next 2 weeks off to recover, just to make sure you beat Bobby Riggs." Larry offers to call Marilyn if her presence will help improve Billie Jean's mood and game, but Billie Jean declines. We then cut to Marilyn at the salon, who's looking concerned at the predictions on TV of Billie Jean's impending loss to Bobby Riggs. Marilyn rushes out mid-perm, obviously going to go to Billie Jean's side. So, again, this sort of happened, but not necessarily at the time shown.
I think in reality, Billie Jean and Marilyn had an ongoing relationship that lasted for years. I don't think it ended like they show, only to be resurrected in her time of need. Larry offering to contact Marilyn, it almost certainly, it wouldn't have happened because I don't think Marilyn was back at her hairdressing job. But it does go a long way to say how gracious and generous he is towards his wife. That anything that'll be better for her, he'll happily support, and that's definitely his character, as we say. The opening scene shows shows Billie Jean losing to the US Open. And again, they got the details of that a little bit wrong. It wasn't in the month of September when the Battle of the Sexes was about to happen. It actually was a bit earlier. But, minor details, we won't quibble about that.
Yeah. And certainly, I mean, I find it incredible considering his age, and knowing what Billie Jean King would go on to achieve. But it does appear that the consensus of opinion was, well, he's going to win. If she can put up a spirited fight, she'll be applauded and it'll look very good. But he's going to be too much for her. And you think, I'm 55 in a couple of months. I could. It's like me going, well, no, it's not, because obviously I wasn't a number one tennis player, but I'd really struggle against any competent 20-something female athlete in anything I've ever been any good at. It's crazy.
Yeah, agreed. But he did beat Margaret Court, though. See, he was the favourite. People thought that he would win just based on that alone, let alone his previous track record as a tennis champion. But
yeah, no, and I'm not really saying that I'm surprised through reality. I mean, he clearly was a very, very good tennis player and had kept himself in relatively good shape, which again, he just doesn't fit with the gambling, hedonistic kind of character that he appears to have been. So fascinating. Anyway, back to the movie. So we're getting close to the day of the match, and we see Bobby and his entourage meet a now healthy Billie Jean in the foyer of their hotel. Jack Kramer's there too, and he announces he's going to be doing the commentary on ABC for the match. Billie Jean tries to reject this. The guy who told her she'll fail in her attempts to start a female pro circuit should not be providing comments to the millions who'll be watching her performance. Billie Jean and Jack then get to talk alone, and they threaten to blame each other if the event collapses. But Billie Jean stares him down and storms off, and Jack Kramer, fair play, he withdraws as commentator. Now, did this happen? Do you know?
Well, it did happen. It did happen that Jack Kramer was going to be the presenter, and Billie Jean King wasn't happy about that, and he decided that he would stand down. I don't know if it happened publicly like this in the foyer of a hotel, and then they stormed off on their own to sort of wrestle it out. But the basic facts there are correct. Jack Kramer did withdraw because Billie Jean King wasn't happy with him being the main commentator.
So you got this guy, Gene Scott, was it?
Gene Scott became his replacement, but in the movie, most of the commentary is done by veteran sports commentator Howard Cosell. The movie also goes on to say that the co-presenter with Gene Scott would be Billie Jean's tennis-playing friend Rosie Casals, and that's correct. That really did happen too, but we'll get to that once the match starts, I think.
Yeah, and I do find it fascinating. It's commented by, I think it's Marilyn in the movie, or it's someone who's like us, is not an insider of the tennis, professional tennis world, that these girls all travel together on their tour. They room together, they got their hair done together, they're obviously friends, and yet as soon as they're on the court, they're rivals. And you think, wow, in the ultra-professional, focused, cold world of modern professional sports, you couldn't imagine that happening. I know motorcycle racers will say you can be friendly with your teammate, but you're very rarely going to be friends, because you hate each other. You have to hate each other on the track to try and beat each other. So yeah, it's fascinating. It was quite nice.
It makes me think of the second one we ever did, Rush, where the two rivals really were at hammer and tongs. They eventually became friends, but at this stage of their career, when they're both at the peak in the sports, it's all about the competition, or it was all about the competition in Rush.
Absolutely. And yet, of course, in reality, they had been friends. Then, as they both got to the top at the same time and were rivals, it became less so, and then they became friends again afterwards, yeah. So, back to the movie. It's match day, and we're at the venue, which is in the Houston Astrodome, which is actually a baseball stadium as its day job. And we see it from above, and we see Billie Jean all alone in the stadium at the start of the day, and then finally Bobby, still popping vitamins, and his team arrive. Oddly, Larry King, Bobby's son, bails and informs Bobby he's going to watch the game from the stadium rather than by his side. This surprises Bobby, but there's nothing he can do about it, and he carries on quite happily. Then we see Billie Jean pre-match with her entourage, including Rosie, her parents, and Teddy, fussing about her overall look, saying, "Oh, I don't know what's wrong, but something's off." And then, as if by magic, Marilyn appears and suggests it could be her hair. And the others all leave, so Billie Jean and her hairdresser can be alone. So we cut to Bobby's dressing room, where there's a group of cheerleaders and Bobby, and they're all decked out in this sugar daddy gear, which has been provided by the sponsor. There's something really, really sleazy and discomforting about this 55-year-old guy surrounded by these young cheerleaders, all dressed up in these sugar daddy costumes. It's like, awkward.
Well, unfortunately, that is all spot on. There was a product called Sugar Daddy. They paid him a bucket load of money to wear the gaudy outfits, surrounded by the young women. I suppose it's almost like you couldn't parody this stuff, could you? But it's all quite correct, unfortunately.
It's Steve Carrel being Steve Carrel, but also Steve Carrel being Bobby Riggs. It's great.
Exactly. At the start of that scene, when we've got Bobby arriving at the Astrodome and taking the down escalator when his son decides to tell him that he won't be joining him after getting him. I'm watching that thinking, what's going on here? That doesn't make any sense at all. Why all of a sudden out of the blue does he say he's not going to be by his father's side? Well, apparently it's true. It's exactly what happened at the last minute, and I don't know whether it had any bearing on the outcome, but Larry, who'd been on board for his dad's antics and this big profile match, said at the very last moment, "You're on your own, Dad, I'm going to watch from the stadium." So there you go. And the fact that Marilyn came back and they get some alone time to cut her hair. I mean, in reality, Marilyn did cut Billie Jean's hair before the match, but that was just part of her duties. She did that all the time. It was nothing special, but it's not exactly true.
No. So, I mean, again, we see Bobby Riggs. He is milking every possible dollar and cent out of this that he can. Back to the movie, the broadcast commences and we see the technicians supervising the transition. We hear Howard Cosell introduce the event to the 90 million people viewing at home, as well as 30,000 at the event, then a world record for any tennis match. We see the crowd, including Billie Jean's professional tennis colleagues, milling around excitedly as the tension builds. Billie Jean is in her last-minute haircut from Marilyn, and the excitement slows down as the two quietly bond, and Billie Jean says to her, "Can you hang around after the match?" We then see a pre-recorded segment from Jack Kramer where he tries to take the high ground, telling viewers it was his decision to step down from commentary duties to make sure that Billie Jean couldn't use the excuse, should she go down, that their rivalry put her off the game. Billie Jean then leaves both Larry and Marilyn behind as she enters the arena alone. She's in an elaborate Cleopatra-style litter complete with hunky male slave attendants, and they enter the arena to cheers and flashbulbs. Howard Cosell helpfully tells us that if Billie Jean would ditch the glasses and let her hair grow, she'd probably be quite pretty. It's incredible, isn't it? We get a whip round of the interested parties watching at home, including Margaret Court and Jack Kramer. Bobby then enters on his own litter, carried by the Sugar Daddy girls. We go back to Howard introducing his female co-presenter, which is Billie Jean's good friend Rosie Casals. Howard is inappropriately excited about Rosie and has his arm around her shoulder and is holding her way too close. Meanwhile, Billie Jean and Bobby swap gifts before the match commences. He gives her a giant prop Sugar Daddy lollipop, and she gives him a live miniature pig to suit his self-appointed title of a male chauvinist pig. After a little more tough talk, the match begins. So the pair face off. Billie Jean serves first. Bobby appears to lead at first, but Billie Jean comes back strongly. We see Larry, Marilyn, Gladys and the other female players all watching intently courtside, as well as Jack, Bobby's pals, and Margaret Court all watching on their TVs at home. Bobby wins a few points, but Billie Jean fights on, and although Bobby wins the first game, before long it's 4-4 in the first set. Priscilla and Billie Jean's parents are also in the crowd, and things are much more competitive than Bobby or his supporters expected, as Billie Jean turns things around and she then ends up 2-0. In the final set, Bobby's hand cramps up and he takes an injury break. The break does him good and he breaks Billie Jean's serve, but Billie breaks back and takes the third set, the match, and the battle of the sexes, much to the pain of Bobby's pals. The crowd goes wild, and to be fair, Bobby concedes to Billie Jean, "I underestimated you." He quietly leaves the stadium and Billie Jean's family, friends and fans celebrate her win. Larry is keen for Billie Jean to dive into the media and ride the momentum of her win, but she declines and she goes off to be alone in the locker room, where you see her starting to sob as her steely facade cracks. We cut to Bobby also in his locker room, looking pretty glum and defeated. Priscilla appears and we get the impression that things will be alright between them. As Billie Jean emerges, her fashion stylist Teddy appears and gives her a hug. Knowing about what she's gone through, he tells Billie Jean that someday they'll be free to love who they want, but for now, she should just enjoy her victory. And Billie Jean walks out to a cheering crowd. Shall we wrap that up?
Yeah, just what I was thinking.
This was the highest live attendance, as in crowd attendance, at any tennis match up to that point.
Yeah, and it will stay that way for a long time. It's been broken a couple of times. Most recently, the biggest tennis match on record is February of this year, when 52,000 people in Cape Town watched an exhibition match between Roger Federer and Rafael Nadal. But for years and years and years, this tennis event was the biggest physical crowd of any tennis match in history.
Yeah,
and
I don't remember. I mean, okay, I was seven when this happened. But my parents are quite big tennis fans, and I don't remember this until you mentioned the movie and we started looking into it.
I don't know whether the time difference might have worked against you. Maybe it was on at 3 in the morning or something.
Yeah, quite possibly.
Yeah, and
I'm not sure we had a television in 1973.
Oh, there you go. But 90 million people watched it on US television. It was a phenomenal event. It was a hugely successful, form of entertainment. 90 million is an incredible number in any era. So it was a very, very successful event, as I say. And all of the stuff leading up to the match and the match itself is very accurately portrayed in the movie. The bit about the Cleopatra arriving with her slaves, bang on. Sugar Daddy with his litter is bang on. The two gifts they swap to each other, one a prop promoting the sponsor Sugar Daddy, and another a real live pig. That is correct as well. Billie Jean just checked that the pig wouldn't be hurt or eaten at any stage, and she was on board with this publicity. And then the match starting and going down to three. Just before we get to the match, there was that creepy scene with Howard Cosell's where he's got his arm around Rosie and it looks like he's really invading her space like a creepy old man. That is spot on. That is actually correct what happened. In fact, they are actually using the footage from the time with Howard Cosell still in frame, and they superimpose Natalie Morales over the top of the footage from the day.
Yeah, that was quite sort of
cringing, wasn't it? Okay, and as I say, the tennis match is quite accurate. The results in reality are as they show in the movie. She did win in 3 sets, 6-4, 6-3, 6-3, and everyone was pretty much surprised at the outcome because she was definitely seen as the underdog. The only thing where they start to stray a little bit is when she disappears from the celebrating crowd and gets all overcome by the emotion she's been bottling inside and starts to cry. That never happened. She was there the whole time, celebrating throughout. It is a nice scene. It does humanise her quite a bit, but it's not correct.
Okay.
Yeah.
So the movie's now coming to the end, and the final text tells us that Billie Jean eventually divorced Larry and found her true love, Liana Kloss. Larry remarried, with Billie Jean and Liana becoming godparents to his children, which kind of reinforces this whole idea that actually, even though she was confused about who she wanted to be with, they remained very good friends.
Yes.
Bobby and Priscilla Riggs, it says, remained happily married for the rest of their lives, but he never gave up gambling. Billie Jean became an advocate for LGBTQ rights and was inducted into the Tennis Hall of Fame in 2011. She was also the first female athlete to receive the Presidential Medal of Freedom. We also see some pictures of the real Billie Jean and Bobby during the events leading up to the match, with the last picture being the two of them together, smiling. The end. So, yeah, even the wrap-up is kind of, it's telling the truth, but it's not telling the whole truth, and it's certainly not telling anything but the truth, because, Bobby and Priscilla Well, Bobby and Priscilla, as you've pointed out, they actually had already divorced and they didn't get back together again or they didn't get married again until 1991. So, there was quite a gap. But you've got some good insight into the Billie Jean and Marilyn relationship.
Yeah, I mean, it shows we don't know where they're going to go when the movie ends, I guess, but it did tell us that she did find, Billie Jean did find love with another tennis player. It's her former doubles partner, Ilana Kloss. So what happened between Marilyn and Billie Jean, they kind of gloss over all of that. In fact, the two of them were a couple. They were together until 1979, when Marilyn had an accident in a house that was owned by the Kings, both of them at this stage, and she became a paraplegic as a result of that accident. So their relationship has now ended, and Marilyn soon threatened to go public with the love letters that she'd kept that had been written between the pair. And then 2 years after the accident in 1981, she filed a lawsuit against Billie Jean on the basis that during their relationship, Billie Jean promised to look after her. By filing this suit, Marilyn was publicly outing Billie Jean, who had no idea what was happening. She learnt that the suit had come and that the public knew of a same-sex relationship that Billie Jean had while playing in a tennis tournament. So she was in Orlando in Florida playing a tennis tournament some 18 years after the Battle of the Sexes match. She was 38 at this time, but she was still a competitive doubles player and was shocked when the press started asking her questions about her sexuality based on the public lawsuit. Her advice from her lawyers was originally to deny everything and stay stum, but just a couple of days later, against her lawyer's advice, Billie Jean came clean. In her autobiography, she says of this event, I was sure the thing would never go away of its own accord. It was always going to be there nagging at us, and every time it might fade a little, we could be sure that Marilyn or her lawyers would do something to bring it back into the public eye. So she outed herself officially. Her press conference at the time, when she confirmed Marilyn's accusations, was attended by both her husband Larry and her conservative parents. The overall reaction from the general public at this news outing herself was generally pretty positive, but within 24 hours she'd been dropped by all of her sponsors, worth some $2 million. The lawsuit went to trial, but it didn't end well for Marilyn. Her claim was denied on the basis that there was no real explicit agreement for Billie Jean to give her a roof over her head. As we've said, Larry supported Billie Jean throughout this, and they would divorce 5 years later, by which time, as we've said, she was in a relationship with Ilana Kloss, her former doubles partner. Ilana Kloss and Billie Jean King are still together, and as the movie states, Larry and Billie Jean remain on amicable terms, and Billie Jean was in fact the godmother to Larry's son from his second marriage.
Okay, and now you can throw your hand grenade in.
Oh, right. Thank you. Yeah, because Bobby defeated Margaret Court so easily, and yet he lost comprehensively in 3 sets to Billie Jean, there's been a lot of questions raised that maybe he threw the game. This accusation has never been proven, but we knew that he bet on himself to win in Wimbledon in 1939, so he broke the rules in that regard, betting on yourself. So it's definitely not inconceivable that he would bet on himself to lose in 1973 as well. So, as I say, never proven, but there is the possibility that the ultimate showman, chasing the money, set himself up to be the odds-on favourite by easily defeating Margaret Court, and then in a subsequent match decided he can make even more money if he bet on himself to lose, and then throwing the match. So,
I did read that in I think it was a New York Times or Washington Post article, this suggestion, but the author, who was one of their historical tennis commentators, reporters, a tennis expert, said it's generally accepted that accusation is put out by today's male chauvinists to try and excuse why he lost to a woman. So, and they've said, he said, if you study that game, they have experts who watch all the time, just from point of view of writing, pundits and the like, but also people who are always, it's in a one-on-one game like tennis, the opportunity to throw a game is obviously there, but there are tells where someone plays a shot slightly uncharacteristically, or they don't go for a shot that normally they would have got, and they say there are none of those indicators with Bobby Riggs. His performance gradually goes down as he tires. but it's very consistent. So this guy, I can't remember if it's a guy or a girl who wrote it, but was like, nah, I don't think that's...
You're right.
That's really plausible.
And if you are going to throw a tennis match, you don't want it to be the one that 90 million people are watching and you've got literally the eyes of the world on you. You want it to be a little bit more off-Broadway than that, don't you?
No, exactly. And it's so much more difficult to get a team game to throw, or a team sport to throw a game, witnessed by the Chicago White Sox in the 20s and their infamous, trials afterwards when they all, 8 of them I think, got together. But
they all cracked.
But it is what's so closely in one-on-one games, especially I would imagine in a high-profile game like this. So, and you had an interesting little thing about. What's the relevance of the Utah town of Sandy? Is there a tennis tournament there?
I don't know, but some webpage where I was looking at the life of Bobby Riggs, I think, it just said that amongst all of the little snippets that you can about a person and how much they've won and how many tournaments they've won, they said one of his legacies for Bobby Riggs is there's a town in Utah, a very conservative state, where they have a Riggs Drive named after Bobby Riggs, and it's just around the corner from Kramer Drive named after Jack Kramer. And when I Google mapped the area, I could find a Borg court named after Bjorn Borg. There's a Wimbledon Drive. And I tried as hard as I could, but I couldn't see a King Street mentioned in Sandy anywhere. So they're honouring Jack and Bobby, but not yet Billie Jean.
Oh dear. So yeah, the wrap up. I think entertainment. I think possibly having seen its score on Rotten Tomatoes, I went in expecting not to enjoy it tremendously, but it was much better than The Favourite, which is another one I remember going in slightly dubiously. I enjoyed it. It didn't drag. I thought Steve Carell's portrayal is pantomime villain, and yet, as we keep saying, it appears that's actually quite an accurate portrayal of Bobby Riggs. He's a lovable rogue with sinister underlying traits. This real, which probably was typical for the time, chauvinistic streak, and it is a great, fist pumping moment at the end. You're going, yeah, and now you've just been beaten in straight sets. So it's great. And Emma Stone's portrayal of Billie Jean King is very likeable. You can see she's conflicted. You can also see the focus she brings to being, a professional athlete at the top of her game.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah. The portrayal by the two main characters is really good. They're subtle when it needs to be, over the top when it needs to be, and seems to be more than just catching the spirit of the two real people that they're portraying. I think Larry's portrayed really well and accurately. From a character point of view, I think they're engaging and historically accurate. So what about for entertainment, though? Let's wrap that up.
I think first. if we're not allowed half points, I've got to give it 8 because it's better than a 7. 8 might be a little bit pushing it.
Yeah, I agree. 8's pretty high, but 7 does seem a little bit mean.
Yeah, can we have half points for once?
Sure, doesn't worry me.
I'll give it 7.5.
Yeah, I agree. That's a good compromise.
Historically, and then it gives it a nice 15 out of 20. That probably is a 7, maybe a 6.
Really, I would mark it higher myself.
Maybe 7 probably.
Yeah, I give it 7.5.
Actually, no. Yeah, the playing around with time, we've been quite forgiving of him before. Yeah, it's 7
that's right.
Probably. 7.
That's right. I'll give it 8. In fact, because a lot of the facts they got right. A lot of the minor characters are actually real. They did use some of the footage from Howard Cosell being a bit creepy too, I guess. So I'll give them some, I'll give them some points for that. I think it's 8. I think a 7.5 for entertainment for me and 8 for history. And you, 7.5 and 7?
Yes, 7.5 and 7. So it gets 15 out of 20 on each aspect. Right. And I know I've commented on this before, but I love the way we discuss this bit really seriously, like it's important.
Yeah, like Steve Carrel and Emma Stone are going to take some consolation that we gave them, 7.5 instead of 7, right?
Well, they'll be hitting refresh on their podcast catcher.
Exactly.
Just waiting for this episode to come out, and they'll go straight to the end to get the scores before they listen to the rest of the show, I'm sure. If anyone knows Steve Carrel and Emma Stone, please ask them not to listen to this because they might be underwhelmed.
Okay.
So looking forward, it will be Just Mercy next, and with the best will in the world, I can't exactly say when, but it's probably going to be, it's going to be at least a couple of weeks, possibly 3 or 4, maybe depends what happens in the world. We will try and get it out before the American election, and then we can make comment on that on the next one when we'll be with Sean and Cody.
Cody,
of course. Yeah, so
get the American perspective.
Yeah. And if anyone hasn't listened to Green Screen, I do recommend it. I know certainly Dr. Phil Pomerantz listens to it because he frequently is mentioned as a correspondent to them, and I think Gary Shavit listens to it. But it's really interesting how the boys do a really different take. It's a very different format to what we do. So we are thrashing out how we're going to do the Gorillas in the Mist. So it's probably going to be a mix of the two. And then we're independently going to edit it. So for ours, Andrew and I will do our intro, and then you'll have the main body of the show with hopefully all of us, and they will edit theirs. So there will actually be slight differences between the two. Yeah. So
very interesting. Okay, so I suppose we'll leave it at that, Martin. Until next time, hey?
Absolutely. Please, everybody, keep safe. Keep the emails coming because they're great, and we will certainly acknowledge and reply to every email. I dropped the ball a little bit before midway with people I hadn't replied to for ages, but eventually we did. One was lovely. I got a lovely reply. I think it might have been David in Augusta, Georgia, who I apologise for leaving it sort of a week or 10 days. It was just around the time I was coming back out to Qatar from having been home in the summer. And I said, I normally try and reply more promptly. And he said, wow, you just replied. He was really sweet about saying, no, I occasionally write into shows. Most of them you never hear a thing. I'm like, really? Okay. It's very, very rude of them, you see. But this is what's nice about having this lovely, friendly, tight community of hundreds rather than thousands.
Okay, well, thanks, Martin. Until next time, keep well.
Absolutely. Cheers, everybody. Bye-bye.
Next, Riggs challenged 5-time Wimbledon champion Billie Jean King.
So my heart starts to pound and my stomach, my stomach's starting to feel that pressure right away because I knew I was going to say yes. I knew that it was on. The match was on.
Personally, I wish the women would stay in the home and do the kitchen work and take care of the babies and compete in areas where they can compete in.
Hey, you chauvinist pig, give a listen to the ballad of Bobby Riggs.
The promotion was Riggs' bombast at its best.
Henry VIII. I loved him because this guy really knew how to handle his women.
$100,000 TV rights and diamond collars, and the winner takes it all. Shake my hand.
He was constantly promoting.
And it is going to be the battle of the sexes. Don't anybody let you tell you it's any different.
Oh, too wrong, huh?
Hawking his book and kissing female fans. In one workout, he sold tickets to watch him hit balls at a poster of Billie Jean King. Instead of training every day, Riggs was partying and hustling.
Bobby's practice sessions are really more like money orgies. He took $100 from a shoe manufacturer in this match against one player and 32 chairs.
Now you've heard the ballad of Bobby Riggs.